All right, episode 105. Thank you guys for joining us on today's episode. We have Tom Taylor, aka Movement Power, because he provides that power to the movement athletes out there. He's coached and provided conditioning programs for many of the best parkour athletes in the world, like Ed Scott and Tim Champion and Joseph Henderson, to name a few. And we do discuss some of that programming and the strategies he uses and that conversation. But mostly what we talk about in this conversation is the rebellious nature of parkour and how it plays into the whole socio-economic and political conversation, and just why it's valuable and why we want to hold on to that. And he's got some really interesting views on it. I really love this conversation. He's got some awesome content, so be sure to go into the description and view everything that he's doing, because he's doing some original awesome things. And I hope you guys like this as much as I did. Enjoy. So we have Tom Taylor joining us. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being a part of this one. And like I was just saying, how are you? I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, all good, man. Just trying to start the year off well, you know. It's
Mm.
trying to swerve the sickness and everything, and trying to train despite the weather right now in England, especially down here in the south. It's just wet all the time,
Oh, really?
windy. Yeah,
Both.
yeah.
Those are getting away. Oh my God. We got snow right now in Colorado. And so there's really not much
hmm
to do in the ways of outside training either. But we get some good days too. Um,
Yeah. You guys have got a lot of gyms though, right? You've got a lot of
well,
indoor spaces to use.
I guess we do. I don't really train as often indoors these days, just because I've been, as I've gotten older. I don't know how old you are. How old are you right now?
I'm 32.
32. Okay, so same age roughly. I'm 33. I just I train tend to when I train indoors, I tend to want to just lift and like just do conditioning and supplementary stuff, and then save like more of because I don't, my knees and my joints and things, they don't give me like unlimited bandwidth. You know what I mean? I don't know how it is for you.
hmm
So if I'm gonna train, I like to train outside. I just feel happier that way, and it kind of kills. But yeah, there is some great indoor spaces here. I just don't typically. I like to save myself for the for the outdoors, which actually kind of ties in maybe into a little bit of kind of the reason why we started chatting it up. You were listening in, I think, to the Nate Weston episode, and we started talking about how the parkour, our practice can influence the zeitgeist of like our generation. And you had an interesting take on it, and I didn't know, how much you um, have thought about all these things. And this is a new part of you that I'm seeing. So can you explain a little bit about these reality or experience tunnels, and you know where you started in that journey in developing these theories? Because it sounds like you're writing some essays and you're doing some really cool things.
Yeah. Kind of been thinking about this stuff for quite a long time. I mean, alongside parkour, like I was always into politics and philosophy, and
Mm.
kind of on the fringes as well. Like read a lot of kind of broader. You could probably describe them as like anarchist stuff, like a lot of zines and like different things online that I got into after. I think I sort of really funny way of getting into it. Do you know Henry David Thoreau? Do you know that guy? He wrote
I know of
Walden
him.
and
Yeah, I know of that.
yeah,
Like I know just the mainstream like
yeah.
whispers, but I don't know him. I don't think I like can like
Okay, yeah.
picture
So
his.
he was quite like a
Oh, I knew
famous
this. His
author.
favorite quote of mine, or his favorite quote,
Mhm.
yeah, is "A thousand are hacking at the branches of evil, with to every one striking at the root," or something to that effect, right? And I
That's
did. That's one thing I remembered of his that I liked.
yeah. He so I think that was probably the most influential person for me, like when I was younger.
Mm.
He wrote Civil Disobedience, and I came across that really weird way. I was watching the TV one day, and there was a part of like an old Western. I say old Western, it was probably made in the 70s or something. Um, like one of these TV shows. I didn't know the name of it at the time, and there was a part of it where they like described civil disobedience, like the essay written by him. And it was basically saying, you've got kind of a moral obligation to disobey any law which is immoral. You know, the
Mm.
outcome, if the outcome or the kind of the foundation of it is immoral and you determine it to be, then it's kind of your duty as a moral person, you know, as an actor in the world to disobey that law. And that was the foundation of like, I think he wrote that justifying his positions on like abolition of slavery and
Mm.
a bunch of other things. I think he went to prison for probably a short period of time
Sounds like he
because
would.
he yeah he
Avid
refused to
lawbreaker.
pay
I liked it.
yeah he refused to pay like an income tax or something because he was saying like, you know, I'm propping up
Oh
this
yeah.
state that's involved with that. So that kind of drew me into it. Actually, fairly recently, I found out that that was an episode of like Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. So
Oh yeah.
I went, I went on Reddit and was like, oh, I remember this. I distinctly remember this scene that took me to this book.
Oh wow.
When I was a kid, I was probably like 13 or 14. I read that, and then I read like, you know, the classic kind of stuff like 1984 and a bunch of other stuff, and it kind of was the window into reading more politics
Mm.
and eventually philosophy. And then I've kind of gone on to read like classics and a lot of different stuff. And yeah, like always had these kind of sensibilities that uh, kind of led me more towards. I've always been kind of biased towards like freedom, the ideas
Mm-hmm.
of freedom and liberty, and the idea of like individual responsibility and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I've always had like quite, I would say, um, left-leaning sensibilities as well. Like fairly, you know, I don't have like the social conservatism that goes along with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you know, because you tend to in the US in particular, I think, especially these days and how divided things are,
Mm-hmm.
you tend to have, you know, any kind of anyone talking about liberty and freedom uh, is also quite socially conservative. It seems, you know,
Yeah, it is
they
very
all kind of
odd in a way because there is that like it's almost a stereotype or a caricature of like that point of view. And maybe I don't know. I'm curious about the bias, like why that happens because I know people in my life that are not so one dimensional or they're more nuanced in
mhm,
their in where they lie on either side of these issues and you couldn't
mhm.
like cut one and then be able to cut all the other ones in like down. Does that make sense? Like if you identify one person's position here, it's not so simple as now there are positions all across hundreds or dozens of other issues, but for whatever reason it is still the stereotype and it is like the people that are most vocal do seem to be
Mhm.
that uh of that
Yeah,
camp.
yeah, absolutely. And here in the UK, growing up, I kind of saw, um, I would say, like the development and finally the kind of establishment of like a kind of safety culture. We have this really,
uh
we have like here we have like health and safety legislation. When you get kicked off of a spot here, if you're training, they'll say, you know, very much along everybody says the same thing because pretty much the law is established in the same way across the board, and you know it's an easy way for them to say you need to leave,
yeah,
um,
it's always liability,
because
right? It's our liability.
yeah,
It's your safety we're looking
exactly,
after.
yeah. Even though you know demonstrably from because in the UK we're like I'm not sure if it's still the case, but we were, I know, the most kind of we had the most coverage of CCTV in like in I think in the world, at least in Europe.
Oh yeah.
So you're kind of always in view of some camera, whether that's a private camera or whether it's run by your local council
Mm.
or something along those lines. Um, so even though demonstrably from that footage they could see um, you're not using this space as it's intended, you know, which I mean, arguably you could say there's no way we could sue you if we got injured because we're clearly doing something that's like we're not what the space is intended for. Like, yeah, so I've seen this happen, uh, and yeah, that's kind of led me towards this kind of outlook that I have now. And yeah, I see parkour as a kind of I really want to like reclaim. or at least underline the subversive nature of parkour,
Mm.
because as we um, had more mainstream like recognition, and as institutions are beginning to establish themselves. So, we have obviously, like, the kind of gymnastics interest looking at us and wanting to regulate us. We also have, grassroots ones, and kind of like, I don't know, medium level guys that might be on the periphery of the community, that are kind of attempting to create institutions that, to kind of protect the sport, or to
Mm-hmm.
raise standards in coaching, and those
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
things. And whilst that's all great for people that are trying to make a living, and I understand, like, there does need to be that aspect, because we exist, the circumstances we're in, we need to make money in order to survive, and that's great. And more power to anybody doing that, for sure, like
yeah.
coaching or anything along those lines. But um, what that does, though, is it kind of brings in this idea that we have to be respectable, that we have to be, I don't know, we have to subscribe to how we're supposed to be seen. You can't do anything too reckless or risky.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've heard from the Story guys, them, really wrestling with the fact that they've been told by people, if my child sees what you're doing and they copy what you do, and they hurt themselves, that's your responsibility. Like, they've been told that by people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. 100%.
And and so, yeah, it brings about this question of, like, what's 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 the usefulness of the subversive and, like, rebellious element of the sport? Because really, it came out of quite a quite like so like imagine this: you have a bunch of guys, all from pretty much, all their families come from parts of the world that were colonized by France. They find themselves living in the suburbs of Paris, in a really horrible area.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been there, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's not a nice place, bro. Like,
The
Nice is
brutalist.
quite
It's
nice.
called brutalist architecture. It's not known
Yeah,
for its tenderness,
yeah,
that's for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. But not even that. Like, just,
Well, yeah, and it's
the
just
poverty of the
it's an
area.
absolute, yeah, it's yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so these people find themselves in this circumstance where, they're, not only are they in a position where they have very little power in the society they live within,
Mm,
but also they are kind of oppressed by this architecture around them, and, which tells them, you need to walk in this direction, you need to follow these pathways.
mm,
But because of the nature of that, they found a way to exploit it and subvert its use, to strengthen themselves, to empower themselves, and to escape the paths they're being led down. You see
mm-hmm,
what I'm saying? Like,
mm-hmm.
this is like, I'm talking about this figuratively and actually physically at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah, 100%.
and I think a lot of the time, we can get philosophical about the sport and talk about, oh, it's taught me to overcome obstacles in the rest of my life and all this kind of stuff. But I feel
Mm-hmm,
like that's really missing a the kind of social political aspect of it as well, which
mm-hmm.
is, you find yourself almost boxed in circumstantially. And um, the essay the part of the essay that I sent,
Yeah,
I speak about more and more now in society, because we have this strange combination of the state and corporate entities as well, kind of, kind of curating our experiences. So in the scope of the state, you have, you go to school, you follow the curriculum, then you might go to higher education, you go to work. Your home life is very dictated, and then, you might escape that through fantasy. So that those fantasy areas would be the digital space, video games,
mm-hmm,
media, that sort of thing. Or you might go on holiday, and this is everyday reality for the vast majority of people living in the West,
mm,
living in, kind of the English speaking countries, and a lot of the more developed nations. And in my mind, it's uh, nations that are captured by um, nations that are captured by a combination of uh, interests that are being being served. Uh, yeah, sorry.
You're good.
They're kind of they're captured by states and corporations that work in tandem because they serve each other's interests. Is what I mean to say. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, and so what I was saying there is, a lot of the time when you're in your life, when you're experiencing life, you have you ever looked back at parts of your life where you feel um, you were looking at things a certain way, and that's how you experience reality.
Yeah, a
And
hundred
that was
percent.
reality to you at the time, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's there's sayings that go along with that. Your perspective is your perception is your reality. Is a famous one. But yeah, I absolutely
Mhm.
agree. It's like you can there is an extent of like to what you're aware of and conscious of, and that was kind of what the last little height drop line was about. Is just like that is your pen. That's your play pen.
Mhm.
And until you completely dissolve those boundaries, or until you really push them, you're in a way caged, even if it's in your own mind, just based on the
Mhm.
information and the perspective that you can have, because you can't have certain perspectives until something changes the way you view it, or mind altering drugs for some people, or or experiences like
Yeah.
parkour and practices that can really open things up for you. But absolutely, I
Yeah.
know
So
I know what you mean.
I think what happens is people find themselves in kind of an everyday cycle, and living these lives that are safe and predictable because kind of predictable behavior and profitable behavior is kind of the lifeblood of these systems we find ourselves within.
Mm-hmm.
They're the lifeblood of corporate life. You know, investors want to make safe investments that are predictable, right?
Yeah.
They want you to behave respectably. They want you to behave within the bounds of what their particular corporate culture is. And in the same way, in the political sphere, in the kind of social contract sense of things, you want to behave predictably because taking big risks can have quite big consequences, both for the individual and maybe for a community or for you know people that happen to be there. Have you ever looked at a jump with some consequence, and have you ever had anybody have a go at you
Oh
and
yeah.
tell you off? You might
You could
you
have
might
landed on
fall and
me and
hurt
killed
someone.
me. It's like, yeah, I've heard that
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, and I think what parkour represents in these circumstances is a true escape from these dictated courses um, within society.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I think the reason for that is because we get to put ourselves in a position where we are truly contending with risk and truly like experiencing danger at quite a high degree. Like quite, there are large consequences to some of the things that we're doing. There are like big consequences,
Mm-hmm.
and the actual experience that we're having is quite extreme. And a lot of the time in society, the you're directed towards experiences that are again predictable, profitable. So they're going to be within this kind of narrow. You might get excited about something,
Yeah.
but you're never going to have a truly visceral, embodied reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in someone's day-to-day life, unless they've got some sort of anxiety disorder or something along those lines. When is anyone ever really going to feel that fear in the pit of their stomach?
Mm-hmm.
If society is doing its job right as it's supposed to, and if their job is a safe job, if like I say here in the UK we have all this legislation around what you can and can't do in your workplace. For
Yeah.
example, I could have been disciplined. I work for a large corporation here. I could have been disciplined and eventually let go from a job for not holding the handrail as I walk down the stairs. Like
it's
that's
it's absolutely absurd.
yeah. And
Well,
and
and
that is sorry, go on.
no, you're good. I was just like, it just comes down to that personal responsibility, that sort of, and we could call it a bias, because obviously on the other hand you have safety.
Mhm.
There's like this. I think freedom and safety are kind of like the scales that you're balancing in this kind of question. Is like, okay, well, how much, how much do you value the ability to make your own choices versus how much do you want someone looking out for you? And yeah,
Yeah,
it's odd that
I
like,
think there's,
go ahead.
sorry, go on.
No, you're good. Go ahead. I was,
I think there's definitely like, it's a very understandable thing in society to want to make things safe for people and to want to design things so that people don't get hurt. But there is and that certainly works in the short term. But
mm-hmm.
there's a long-term consequence to that,
Yeah,
which is people who never encounter risk, people
mm-hmm.
who never encounter danger, are then far more vulnerable
Exactly.
when real life actually happens.
Yeah, it becomes nerfed to the point where they become impotent or like incapable of. It doesn't scale is the way I just thought of it too. It's just like you can't actually make the world safe in every way that someone wants it to be, because then people are just going to keep asking, and it's an
Mhm.
impossible task for any organism to like to even. It's hard enough just for you to do it for your own life to make it the way you want it to and like safe enough, in some ways. But yeah, for so then you get these ridiculous handrail laws because it's like no one wants to be held accountable because the whole premise is almost a rejection of responsibility and
Yeah,
instead of an
absolutely.
adoption of this responsibility. And so then by continuing to pass the buck further and further along, it's like, hey, you can work here, but you can't. You got to use the handrail because I'm not going to get like canned for this or whatever. It's
Mhm.
just like it's such a strange thing that ultimately doesn't scale. And I think that's definitely pivotal for our time right now, especially everything that's going on with the virus and the certain things that
Mhm.
are being exposed in terms of just like how well does that system work when we are not empowered as individuals. It's at least worth the question of just positing. It's like, well, is it actually going to be better? Yeah, it's going to be hard for us to all have a basic understanding of our health, maybe, for example, because we used to just defer everything to the doctor or to the whatever
Mhm.
it is. But by adopting your own kind of responsibility and a role in your healthcare, a little bit more responsibility, at least than is currently kind of the standard, it might actually just scale a lot better because then people are expected to actually be participatory in their own,
Mhm.
vitality and
Yeah, look,
but
and
anyhow,
as well, yeah, I definitely don't feel that. Like, I feel expertise and high level knowledge that people have generated. Like, I'm absolutely on board with that, and I think
yeah,
that sort of thing. But I think that's somebody giving you guidance from an informed perspective
mm-hmm.
entirely different than someone that has quite often a financial interest in attempting to corral you into like some space or some decision.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
well, because they're
I
going to
think that
want freedom too.
those
Like people want freedom. But if you're
yeah
willing to sell your freedom in exchange for some safety, then you're going to make some people they are also seeking freedom, right?
yeah
These huge corporate organizations and their ties with the government, they're trying to do what they can to influence policies and stuff so they can be more free,
hmm
but they're
well
doing it
yeah
in
there's
a
a
sorry, go ahead.
sorry that yeah there's a story there's a big history of that really in the advancement of what is often called neoliberalism, and
Mm,
that under that umbrella is tons of stuff. Like, it's a whole other thing to go into, right?
okay.
But ostensibly what happened, um, from my perspective and from what I've read as well, is that a lot of the kind of burgeoning like kind of liberty focused philosophy and perspectives that came out of the 19th century were kind of co-opted by these corporate interests that were like, oh yeah, individual rights, yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Individual rights for us, for corporations,
Yeah,
not for like the everyday person. And so what you found was, yeah, like, and this is why now so much it goes along with social conservatism, and also the term free trade is applied to corporations. It's not applied to everyday people. It's not saying, oh, you get to voluntarily exchange value with like the person down the street from you.
yeah.
That's not what free trade is about. It's about like these these multinational corporations being able to and states being able to you know uh, reduce tariffs or kind of trade with each other and skirt around different laws
Mm.
and certain things in that way. So um, yeah, I think I think yeah, there's been kind of a hijacking of a lot of the underpinning philosophy behind that, um, and we're now seeing the effects of that, and moreover, like now you're seeing the establishment of things like Meta, and the metaverse,
Mm-hmm.
and in Web 3.0 or Web 3, which is like a new emerging technology that was supposed to be revolutionary, decentralized, and all this kind of thing. But now we're seeing it's becoming captured. It's becoming captured by these corporate interests. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, like, I'm so disillusioned with crypto.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I'm everybody's so excited about it, and I understand you're making money. Great, you're doing bits for yourself, and I'm sure you've got some interest in it. Like and it's great. Like I like to see people doing well and taking an interest in. But it really, if all you're doing with it is day trading, if all you're doing with it is making financial investments, like when Bitcoin first came out, when the white papers were released, and like I was in these spaces back in 2008
Oh wow.
when it was gaining some traction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the what it promised at the time was quite revolutionary, decentralizing and taking the power away from central banks and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
how long has it been? It's been over a decade, and uh, I mean, we're seeing some advance. Like, yeah, with the promise of Web3 is interesting, and NFTs are interesting, but my worry is um, the the kind of people thinking that they're being revolutionary, but they're actually just paying into the same circumstances, just under underneath it. So people, I see this with parkour as well. Like people feel like they're being subversive and revolutionary, or not revolutionary, but rebellious maybe, for
Yeah.
doing parkour. Um, but but are you really? Are
Yeah.
you
It's
not
like,
just
yeah. No, I know exactly what. Well, I actually don't know exactly what you mean. Please go on. But I think I know what you mean.
well, well, if all you're doing with parkour, when you're creating parkour media, if all you're doing is feeding the algorithm,
Mm,
and
exactly.
I get
Exactly.
why
The
people,
algorithm, man. That's where I was going with it. It's just like
yeah,
how much has our culture been co-opted just by Instagram and YouTube algorithms? It's certainly a
yeah, and I'm not
fraction. It's
saying,
certainly a fraction. Like it's certainly taken attention, and it's part of the game, right? To an extent,
yeah,
like you have to play to advance. So there's always a little bit of a again. There's always just two. You could be incredibly rebellious and then incredibly ineffectual if you're
mhm,
just shouting, in complete opposite direction of where everyone is. But you could
yeah,
also, yeah,
yeah, for sure.
it takes,
I think I think what happens, um, yeah. So and like I say, I get it. I get like
yeah,
playing the game because you want to make a living. Like people are really grasping at straws, like not grasping at straws, but really people are like ambitious. They're motivated. They want to do what they love for a living.
mm-hmm.
But if doing what you love for a living turns into you rolling down in the deep and slapping girls ass, like slapping your girlfriend's ass, but pretending she's some random girl and doing a flip and doing all this kind
yeah,
of stuff, you you're like this is not this is not subverting anything. You're not you're not you're not truly putting yourself in these extreme circumstances and truly stepping out of these spaces that the kind of curated spaces that the
yeah. There's
kind
there's
of
a there's a like for do you is it experience tunnel or reality tunnel? Because I wasn't sure which term do you like better.
so initially I was saying reality tunnel,
Yeah,
because like I say, I kind of sectioned it off into two. I'd say you've got the everyday reality tunnel, which is
oh
your
yeah,
work life and your home life and school and everything along those
yeah,
lines.
yeah,
And then you have some reprieve from that, some escape from that through fantasy. again, you're playing video games. Who are the video games made by? Who are the investors for the video games?
Yeah.
You're,
It's
you
not.
know,
It's. I
you're on it.
mean, you can do a lot of things, but it's yeah. It's a world that within a world, and it's not limitless. It's
Yeah,
not.
you're.
It's at least derivative of this world that you actually live in.
Mhm.
So you're gonna have less that you could do inside the video game.
Yeah, and so with Instagram, and with I'm talking about creating art, and I'm talking about creating media. I'm
Yeah.
talking about um, things that you can do in in this technology space as well. Um, so is there some way that you can find to play the game to some level, but also use that playing of the game to subvert the game?
Yeah.
Because I really think the problem is, if you truly sell your soul in that way, if you truly forget, don't make anything that's truly meaningful to yourself,
hmm
truly meaningful, like truly expressive or truly different or unique, and and if you're not if you're somebody who thinks that you're against a lot of the a lot of the kind of corporatism
Yeah.
that is coming in, like if you're someone who's postures yourself as someone who's against that. A lot of people in crypto, for example, posture themselves as being against the mainstream, but they are truly only serving the interests of like the finance industry a lot of the time,
hmm
because you're playing their game by trading. You're playing their game, and I understand that you're uh, kind of reinforcing the value of technology that has the potential to subvert things. But is there something else you could do? You know what I mean? Like maybe you could kind of partially do that, and then maybe I don't
Yeah.
know, do something else with it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of questions I have. I guess one thing I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper on that. Like, how is it similar to, how is it still serving the finance industries in the same way? In Can you give an example more of just like, I get it, but I haven't, like, it's not clear in my head still, like how I think I know what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
but I
Well,
would love if you have you articulate just like how is it not different basically than what already exists by investing in crypto, because yeah, just
well,
finish
maybe
that
maybe
sentence
if you,
if you could.
yeah. So like, okay, a lot of the kind of financial industry is really propped up by subsidy.
Mm,
And there are large investors, there are large players in the game.
mm.
And I mean, did you see what happened with like Wall Street bets on Reddit and that sort of
No, I
thing?
didn't.
There was there was a there's a community of people on Reddit that were kind of they were just playing around really with trading. They were using apps like Robinhood and a bunch of other different ones that were kind of retail end trading apps. You get adverts for this all the time
Yeah.
on Instagram and stuff. Hey, are you into on YouTube? It happens all the time, right? You into trading? Get this app, and we'll let you practice on our fake one, and then you can go in
Oh
and do
yeah.
the real one. Um, and people then are kind of tricked into, I think anyway, they're kind of tricked into involving themselves in what essentially is gambling.
Oh yeah.
Um, and the house always wins in those circumstances, right? Unless you get super lucky.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I would
and
say
I
it's very easy to get swept into, like you're saying, it's and even okay, there's I think two things here that are making basically you're still um you're not working against yourself in a way. You're not really working against these. Again, all this with the caveat: only if you want to identify as someone who's like subversive and against these things. If you
mhm,
don't, you're like, if you're on board with all of
yeah,
them, then fine. Like
yeah,
there's
yeah,
no contradiction there. But the one thing is just the whole premise of it, even with the crypto culture that I've noticed, is just it's still buying into the same kind of value structure, which is get rich, don't share it with anybody, and like take care of you and yours because it's fucking dog eat dog world out here, and like, you know what I mean? Like that, there's not really anything
yeah,
happening subversively or like transformative. It's not very transformative in the culture because it's still basically just like you see these rich asshole fat cats on Wall Street, you could be one of those guys in crypto. And it's like, that's kind of part of the
Mhm.
culture, is just like, yeah, you could, like, they're getting rich, but you should be the one. And it's like, okay, there's, and they're always going to have like this institutional money is going to be so dwarfing to anything that you can do, that you're going to be pushed and pulled around in this game much. It's just, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
energy to even, you know, be remotely successful. And then in being successful, you're still probably not going to be as successful as, that's just how money works. If you have already loads of it to throw around, it's pretty easy to make moves that, you know, if you can influence markets, etc. So I think those are the
Mhm.
two things. It's like, one, there's a value structure thing, and then two, it's still the money game. Like, it's kind of the same thing. It's just these, when you're playing money games in a way that is sort of, and blockchain does offer, like you said, opportunities for this to spread out and
Mhm.
for power to be more decentralized throughout the people.
Yeah.
But yeah, human nature is such that, you know, it's still
Yeah.
yet,
We're
it's
still
yet to
captured
impress
by
you
this.
in some ways. Yeah, and yet to impress me in some ways, for sure, of just like, how subversive, really, how transformative is this? Is it, you know,
Mhm.
is it what it claims to be? It definitely takes a second look to fully understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. Really, like that. That's partially what I was trying to get at, I think, and also the game is absolutely rigged still because there are larger players um, within the world of crypto and stuff that have far more influence over the direction in
Mm.
which it's going than anybody else. And also, if you're only treating the technology as something to get rich from,
Mm-hmm.
rather than trying to build things with it, um, then how involved are you really?
Mm-hmm.
And are you really this kind of uh, techno anarchist that you think you are, or are you are
Yeah.
you are you just a day trading millennial? Like
Yeah.
that's that's how I've kind of described it in the past. Like that's what it is. And yeah, it's the same for a lot of media that's coming out now. And which on the face of it is it kind of postures itself as new and revolutionary, but the same old interests and the same old kind of ideologies and things are behind it.
Mm.
um, but yeah, really, I think what I wanted to say was like things like parkour, like extreme experiences, um, when you're really viscerally reacting to reality, when you're really pushed outside of having anybody looking after you, when you push yourself into those positions, like you look when you're stood at the edge of a jump and you're looking over and you're contemplating your own mortality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really extreme thing to do, but um, truly, like you're you're outside of the scope of these controlling these these kind of controlling factors in society there. And that's why they don't want that's why a lot of people don't want you to do it. That's why
Yeah.
I feel like that that's a and a lot of the reason, like in the UK we had large coaching companies and regulatory bodies that want to position parkour as like a very respectable thing to do,
Mm.
being and it's great, it's inclusive, everyone can do it, everyone should, it should be for everybody, it should be performed at all different levels, it doesn't necessarily have to be this really extreme thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to like emphasize the point that aspect of our culture is really important to keep, and it's important to represent it.
Mm.
Um, and it is a subversive thing, and we really need to like hold on to that and push that out there. And I think like Stora have done a really good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
They've kind of pushed that forward in a lot of ways, and Nate as well. And the really high end guys. But I think a lot of the time when we're talking to new people that are coming into the sport, and we say to them, "Oh, it's very safe," you know, it's not. It's
Yeah.
not safe,
Yeah, that's like
and
the
that's a
weird.
good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the best part about it in many ways. Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah.
with you, man, 100%. I think like, yeah, you just fired up my brain in a way. I was just thinking like, whoa, this is like what I was trying to speak to. I think when I talked about the zeitgeist with Nate, is just like parkour in a way has this truly you empowering sort of opportunity, this extreme opportunity that because it's and again, this it's probably available in all other types of things, but because it's just you and your body, it is so visceral, and it's and because you have so much control. You know, when you're on a skateboard or if you're on different apparatus or things like that, there's just more variables. It starts to cloud, I think, this little nugget that we're talking about here, which is this ability to really confront almost metaphysics, and philosophy in your practice, and
Hmm.
to the point of like even exposing yourself to complete, mortality and death in
Hmm.
scenarios that you don't necessarily get in other sports. Because I mean, climbing, free solo,
Hmm.
stuff, and we're seeing that crossover. I think one of the people that is fascinating in this conversation right now is Leo Urban. I don't know if you're following him and
Yeah.
him and,
Yeah. Yeah.
and his gang. I don't know who else. He's the one that is the most kind of prominent, I guess, in that group right now. But is he part of the blacklist guys? I don't even know. But anyways, they're climbing with the famous Alain Robert, the human
Hmm.
Spider-Man, and he was one of the first people to really pioneer that rebellious spirit. Not one of the first, I guess, but he was one of the more contemporary versions of that.
Hmm.
That's kind of like super interesting because yeah, it's very subversive, and
Hmm.
it was probably
Yeah.
even more subversive when he was doing it. Now it's like almost
Yeah.
he's like passing the baton to these younger guys, and we'll see what happens. And but
Hmm.
anyhow, I just wanted to bring those guys up, and it feels like that's why I'm curious about, is parkour unique in that way, and does it
Mm.
actually offer, because it can't be monetized so easily, because there's no equipment and things, these obstacles in our sport do still again provide like these great, it keeps it pure in some ways, and it keeps it like actually more powerful than if it were
Yeah.
to get like easily adopted into, these more whatever the reality
Yeah.
TVs
I
that
want
exist
I
in
want both to
tunnels.
happen.
Yeah.
I want it to be mainstreamed, but I also want to keep the
Oh yeah,
the kind of
exactly.
subversive element of the culture. I want to keep that rebelliousness there. But
Mm.
we can have the respectable end. That's great.
Yeah.
But I really want to emphasize, there's another area, another perspective within what we do
Mm.
that's extreme and subversive and rebellious, and we need to keep that, and we need to stop treating that like that's our like dirty secret. So it really isn't.
Yeah.
It really isn't. It's like you say, it's a part of the what makes parkour so powerful, because actually, if there's not a lot of money in it, that's a position to leverage really,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have like investors behind us. When you have people like trying to make safe bets off of you, this happens in media all the time,
Oh yeah.
especially in journalism. Well, look at what happened to Vice magazine. Initially, it was one of the most like free, radical, provocative like media outlets
Mm-hmm.
there was, and then it got bought up by a corporation. All of the cool people left. I follow all of those guys now.
Yeah.
These conflict journalists, these people that just fly themselves out to
Oh
war
no.
zones and stuff, put
Wow.
themselves in dangerous positions. But they get these they produce amazing work.
Mm.
They produce incredible work that would never come out of something that an investor had a hand in, because they don't want to be associated with that level of risk,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it could really blow up in their face, which is it's understandable. But if you're really interested in free expression, because the parkour is all about that, right? Free expression. If you're really interested in that, then um, maybe fully getting mainstreamed and becoming respectable isn't the thing that you want to do. It really depends where you want to come from, and what perspective you want to represent within the sport, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important that you mentioned and yeah, reiterated that we want both ultimately, because they support each other to a degree, if it's all extreme, then it becomes rather exclusive and exclusionary to people that aren't
Mhm. Yeah.
maybe they're extreme in a different domain in their life even, but they want parkour to be a safe place for them to do something. So we don't want to reject any of those people. But yeah, I think it's also super powerful and important. And yeah, those are the people that
Yeah,
tend to push the sport into new areas are the ones that are being subversive and not following the mainstream. You can't grow something, by, I guess, I don't know how I was going to finish that, but basically, what I'm saying is just like it doesn't expand when the structures are supposed to be safe and reliable and routine. It's just
mhm.
it's an opposite direction. They're diametrically kind of opposed motivations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the desire for safety is great. I like I say, I don't want to like discount that. I think that
Yeah.
that's really important, especially in society in general. Like, but also in parkour, like we want it to be as inclusive as possible and scalable and accessible and everything along those lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also the yeah, we have to protect the other side of things and represent the other side of things. And I've come up against this with talking to people that are anti-competition a lot of the time, or
Mm.
talking to people that are against some of the media that comes out with parkour, like the kind of I would say more I say traditional, but like there's kind of a more conservative perspective within parkour, like the trying to keep it respectable, trying to have this kind of peaceful warrior mindset
Mm-hmm.
and all this kind of thing, um, and that's happened in a lot of coaching. But yeah, like a lot of people have said, if all you see are the people that are really good at it, maybe it's quite off-putting to people that might otherwise join if they saw somebody, doing it at a lower level.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not one or the other. Why can't we not have both?
Yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same.
Like skiing is one of the most popular things, and no one thinks that they have to be in the X Games to ski. Like you can just
Yeah,
go
yeah,
and bunny
100%.
hill. So it
Hmm.
runs the full spectrum there, which is good. So yeah, we want to. Do you have any examples of people or just actions or things that have happened in the world of parkour or otherwise that you think are good examples of this subversive, rebellious spirit and like that you'd like to see more of or
Yeah.
that you think are taking us in interesting directions?
So I think early days of Stora, right,
Mm.
when they first came out, people were really not happy with what they were doing. I don't know if you remember back then. And
I
then you had THC,
Yep.
um, right, Try Hard Collective,
Mm-hmm.
with how they represent what they do and their lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
what the media that they were bringing out, people were upset about that.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, if people are upset about something, sometimes there's a
That's how
bit
you
of
know
value
you're onto
to
something.
it.
I
And
think Cork Boy takes a fraction of the pot. Cork Boy brings some of that. People were upset with him. I liked that drew reaction out of us. Continue, please.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And again, like that's not to say everything that does, like it's not to say everything has value. Like
Yeah.
there needs to be some meaning in that. There needs to be some, I don't know, some depth to it. Because yeah, you could say, oh, look at me, I'm creating like subversive content. Like for
Mm.
example, like I'm not saying this is what Corkboy was doing,
Yeah.
but if he's literally just putting himself in danger for a clout,
Yeah.
like that's a bit different than someone putting themselves in danger because there is some like meditative process or
Yeah.
some like um experience that they're trying to convey to you.
Yeah.
um yeah, like yeah, so people that are creating media like that, um where there is like a depth of meaning or at the very least an experience that they're trying to convey.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is yeah, and kind of the early days of like Stora still, like they're still doing great content and they're making that aspect of parkour more accessible to people. Like the water challenge stuff was great
Yeah.
because it's scary to do that stuff. The consequences are lower than doing it over concrete or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Still quite an
But it's not
extreme
nothing.
experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. um and people don't like you doing that. They get the the guys that work for the I don't know what they're called, like the little keys or whatever, when they open up and the water rises and
Oh
they come
yeah.
out and tell them all. Yeah. um all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that kind of media is great. And yeah, the stuff that Nate's been doing um as well. uh yeah, anybody that's like really giving perspective behind that. And there's been people I've met recently that. So do you know Flynn Disney?
No,
You know that guy?
well, I do and I don't. I don't think I've
Yeah.
really gotten to know him much yet, but I've just started paying more attention to him. He sounds like someone who's also deep thinking about some of these cool, um, sort of adjacent to parkour and philosophy and
Mhm.
just
Yeah, yeah. He's
I'd someone I'd like to talk to for sure.
I definitely recommend that. I think he would be probably a lot more articulate and and well thought out when he speaks about this stuff than I am. But yeah, his approach to parkour is very experience based. It's very like embodied.
Mm.
And previous to meeting him, my perspective within parkour was like very outcome orientated.
Mm.
So I would think, I need to do these big things
Mm.
because if I don't do these big things, then I'm not good, and I want to be good. So then I need to do these big things. And my focus was never really in the moment, within the experience. It was always about what will I get out of this,
Mm.
and and what will this say about me if I do it or if I don't do it.
Mm.
And a lot of conversations I had with him and like absorbing a lot of the work that he's done. Like he does these posts, and it might be like a reel or it might be a carousel post or something along those lines. But the description in it is just a piece of writing that's like just like there's so much like depth to it,
Mm.
and it's usually based on some research. It's usually like sourced, and again, it's like playing the game but subverting the game to a degree.
Yeah.
He's playing Instagram. He's trying to gain followers, and he's like creating content that might be easily digestible. But within that content, if you click on and you're like a curious person, you'll find this depth
Mm.
underneath it, where he's speaking about his experience, where he's speaking about fear and overcoming fear and like um, different research behind that and all this kind of thing. And another guy that I've trained with a few times, Jay Batrick
Oh yeah, I
from
know
from
him.
Brighton in
Yeah,
the
Pariah
UK.
Clan, you're representing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the Not so much. I mean, the media he creates is great. Like, he's very artistic.
Mm.
He's a really artistic guy. But the other thing about him as well is like he sort of has a there's like an intrinsic understanding of the experience because he spent a lot of time, um, you know, over big drops.
Mm.
Over in these extreme circumstances. Like those are the things that he's practiced quite a lot. So he understands like in maybe not even articulated, but like maybe not even in a way that he'd be able to like write an essay about it.
Mm.
But I've stood at jumps I was afraid of, and he's like just taken the time to speak to me about my experience at that moment, and and yeah, and I think the art that he creates as a result of that, he has all of this stuff about fear and about um, coming up against rather than coming up against reality, you're actually in a battle with your own mind
Mm.
and your own conception of like what might kill you.
Mm.
And and a lot of the art is inspired by like memento mori, remember you must die,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of thing, and it's very extreme again. And his clothing is a reflection of that. There's a depth underneath that, and yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people. There's a few people who are doing that, and I just want to see more people like play the game, but like do something a bit more,
Yeah,
add a
evolve
bit
it
more
as
depth
well.
in there. Yeah, yeah,
Change the
yeah.
game. Don't let the game change you. That was the
Yeah.
fucking what's his name, Macklemore. um,
100%.
yeah, yeah. Shout out to Jay Batrick as well, and Flynn. Well, I'd like to have both those guys on, and talk more about this stuff. This is super fascinating. I agree 100%. I think it's really important to take all these angles. One example that popped into my head is, and Conor McGregor is not a very likable guy these days, but one of the things that I really loved about his story when he was coming up was because he sort of was doing what we're talking about, where he changed the way the UFC game was played by being kind of an ass and like doing all these things. But the secret, the magic behind it was that he had to take himself to an insane level of work ethic to be able to do that. Because he is,
Hmm.
the game is gambling, like you're saying. The game is just like there's always going to be guys that are like thinking that they're tough, that they can, you know, sign into the UFC and like basically use as punching bags for the guys that are just a little more talented, become stars and build up the brand of the UFC. But Connor was able to build himself into like almost a bigger brand than the UFC, you know, or such a degree that he leveraged the game that the UFC was like playing against itself and became incredibly popular and had to like, you know, whatever. I don't know if anyone knows his story as well as I've been a super fan for a while, but that was like one of the things that I admired about his journey was, you know, probably took some luck to a degree, but you know that he walked into that octagon, you know, for the streak that he had every time, just like he had to be prepared as fuck. And
Yeah,
also he
yeah,
had to
yeah.
be kind of insane to like be
Mhm.
taking such risk and keep doubling down on himself, you know, before he ended up, you know, coming up short or whatever. But anyhow, I love where you're taking all
Yeah.
this.
But
Um,
there's value in going there as well. I think
yeah,
there are things to be drawn there.
yeah.
I listened to the conversation you had with Tim,
Oh
I
yeah,
think recently. Yeah,
yeah. I
I
think
think
that was
so.
the last episode.
Yeah. So, and in that he was talking about, trying to watch less MMA because he felt that, he was being drawn to that by perhaps the effects of trauma in his past and that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. Um, and yeah, I found that really interesting because I, I I've gone through phases of thinking that being drawn to like extreme circumstances, extreme mindsets, and being drawn to violence, for example, or being drawn to all these different things are maybe the result of maybe only the result of trauma, only a negative thing. But um, I now think that within within your biology as like a human being, you have a capacity for violence because that's what helped us to survive for so long. You know,
Yeah.
there's the Jungian thing of like you have biology underpinning your individual subconsciousness, and that meets your consciousness, like the kind of small part of your brain that's
Yeah.
actually able to process information and stuff, like with you being aware of it. Um, and so I think I can see why people think that putting yourself into extreme circumstances, putting yourself into extreme mindsets, and being drawn to things like violence or being drawn to like danger and risk and things like that can seem really negative and can seem almost maybe the result of
Mm.
some trauma or the result of some damage to you. But perhaps there's something within human beings that needs to be expressed as well, that it can be done in a productive way that's not actually too damaging. Like I grew up quite rough and got into a lot of fights and was drawn to a lot of those kind of
Oh
situations.
yeah.
Um, when I found parkour and when I found weightlifting, I found a way to engage in those similar mindsets, but that weren't destructive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I think that yeah, for me the same story to a degree. Parkour, I've said it has saved my life because it just gave me a healthy place to put. Like, yeah, I had some trauma and things that I was like, but like, it's not necessarily bad. Like you're saying, I think what you're saying is like these things can be a solution to that trauma, a way to heal it. And then maybe, you know, as Tim's point is maybe like, well, ultimately, then when you might exhaust that healing or exhaust that trauma, and you might be like done with the risk if you really do the healing, whereas it could sustain itself as an addiction or an unhealthy thing potentially in your life if you never actually do the healing. But I think that these things can be very healing, these extremes for sure. And I also agree that like it's just part of the spectrum of humanity to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
where if we
Yeah.
try to reject it, or it's part of, you know, to bring Jung back into it, like it's a part of the unconscious maybe, or just, you know, it's just a part of what's out there. It's an archetype, for, you know, lack of a better term,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be expressed either consciously or unconsciously in people that,
Mm-hmm.
want to
What you
take advantage.
suppress will come out
Yeah,
eventually.
yeah,
You know.
exactly. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Do you think that we will see a new kind of type of athlete? You know, I've posited in my head a few times over the last couple of months, like what is going to be subversive about the athlete? and the extreme athlete, even to be more precise or more specific,
Mhm.
in the generations to come. We've seen, is it just going to keep going further and more flips, more twists, bigger gaps, bigger drops, harder difficulty moves? Or are there going to be added layers of, this subversive content, like more personality in it? I guess it's always been there to a degree anyways, but I'm just curious if we're going to see these philosophies become more important and more a part of the person and the a part of like what we're subscribing to. Because you have like your
Mm.
huge examples like Bruce Lee. It's like, okay, well, he was who he was because he was a great martial artist, but also more almost because of like his views and thoughts on life. And obviously he had great success in the film industry, etc. But I'm just wondering if these, obviously there's going to be figures like that throughout time, but I'm also wondering if there's going to be a trend upwards in just people being more well-rounded before they're do you know what I'm saying? Like basically they have to
Yeah,
have more ideas. It will be, you'll see a decline even in the algorithm, eventually of people just
yeah.
dancing in front of camera for whatever song is trending that week or whatever. But I'm just curious. I don't know that's true, if it evolves that way, or if it just is a
Mm.
wave and eventually it goes back down anyways, or I don't.
Well, I think we've already seen some athletes in the sport that use chemical assistance. Um, Seen some questionable Russian athletes over the years in style, um, who've made some quite big changes to their physiques in quite short periods of time, and also hallmark signs of certain substances, kind of giving them a watery appearance. So I've seen some of that. Um, Not utilized in the best way possible, I would say, in style. You
Mm,
could probably utilize it better in speed or skill,
mm,
um, approaches to the sport. And outside, with power challenges and stuff, I think we're yet to see that.
yeah.
Also, the use of other substances to overcome like fearful situations. I think some of that's happening.
Oh, really?
Um,
Interesting.
and I think that's going to continue to happen. I think that will happen more and more. And I think um, the other thing I really enjoyed, and I had like loads of conversations about this, was the first person I saw doing this was Josh Dowie, right?
Oh, yeah. He's
Um,
he's on my agenda. I need to do an episode with him
yeah.
as well.
So he's someone that moved like very differently to a
Yeah.
lot of other people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and he was almost like I kind of the thing of like you have to learn the rules to throw the rules away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was his movement was like so unique and creative and different, and like it didn't seem like he really cared too much about orthodoxy, about other people going like, oh, you're not supposed to do it that way.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm just gonna do it this way, and this is how I feel to. He's like truly a creative person, like truly out there in terms of, he's not someone that's going to be controlled by like other people's judgment and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I and you see that with some of the THC guys and some of all the development of off axis flips and stuff.
Mm.
I'd like to see that advance as well, and I think there is scope within those areas, within both like uh, hasten to say it. I'm not advocating for this, by the way. I'm not advocating for like chemical
Oh,
assistance, by
yeah.
the way. But I think we're going to see it. I think we will see that eventually because someone's going to. I mean, I think I know. I would know a good approach to you know um, using, for example, like performance enhancing drugs to make someone way more powerful. And
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah. Tell us
they're
more.
always going to be they're always going to be limited by connective tissue. That's the only issue.
Oh,
So that's the only problem. Because your joint health, like you can get your muscles nice and strong, right? But your joint health is determined by how good your connective tissue is, how good your non-contractile soft tissue is. So
mm.
um,
Like your
I
ligaments
don't know
and
how far.
tendons and things, menisci.
Yeah, yeah, all of that stuff. So and there isn't really much you can do about that, as far as I'm aware, anyway.
We're
Um,
working on it. We're working on it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, once it gets to the point where people are like putting hydraulics in them and stuff like that, You know what I mean? It's not really parkour anymore, I would say. But um, yeah, I could see things getting quite extreme.
Mm.
Um, and we
What
already are seeing that,
what other
like look at
chemicals
how
are you? Which chemical you're talking about? Like anabolic steroid use and like other what other chemicals are you thinking that will
well,
start to enter the arena more in
like
years to come?
psychoactive drugs.
Psychoact, yeah, those.
Yeah, I wouldn't say specifically because I don't know,
Oh,
but
okay.
I
But
think
is the idea that like certain substances like MDMA and or like mushrooms or psilocybin or um I mean I don't know like those things would offer an expanded and less fearful mindset like these and or the
yeah,
ability to just produce more output or something these things.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay,
and
interesting.
yeah, pretty much that. Like um, yeah, look, expanding your mind to like newer, like greater potential,
Mm.
and being able to follow through on that. There's probably that I think, yeah, I've known people in the past that have done that,
Yeah,
that have used certain things to overcome like a fear barrier,
yeah,
and I think we're going to see it more and more.
interesting.
I really do because especially if there becomes more money in the sport, if more money gets into the sport, and and also the the, the kind of participation of like the number of people in the
Yeah.
sport increases, then the likelihood of very extreme people kind of getting into the sport and people that are willing to take
Do
those
you
other risks
do you
are
think
gonna.
that's well yeah no and that's part of that's definitely that's a risky I mean that's subversive always with the
Mhm.
culture but also do you feel like that's yeah it's all these things it's a risky it's an adoption of risk and that's kind of like what this whole conversation's been about. I think it's worth mentioning just like those things can be advantageous and also very easy
Oh yeah,
traps
yeah,
right for people because if you become reliant on that for your fear um over the overcoming of fear, then it could be limiting is all I guess I'm saying. But obviously it could help you break through a certain limit. So it's very interesting with when it comes to
yeah,
those things because yeah, it's hard to talk about anyone needing it because everyone's brain's built differently and some people they can't make that jump to the next level without some assistance and other people they were born in
yeah,
the fucking stratosphere of those levels and you're just like that guy is just doesn't care or whatever but
yeah.
yeah anyways.
And yeah, this is not like
And
not
I know you're not
advocacy for
advocating
that at
necessarily
all.
for it. You're just
Yeah,
predicting a
but
little
but also
surge.
but also um, it's like fairness. A lot of people come into the have an idea of fairness. Like we shouldn't let people do that because it's not fair, right? This idea that
Mm.
there needs to be some level of fairness. And I just when was sport ever fair? Like when was it ever fair?
Yeah.
Like you say, like some people come into the sport and they have very significant psychological advantage because they're able to just like for some reason send stuff, like
Yeah.
really send stuff that are like much higher risk. Like me for example, I had to put myself in such like extreme, like a really intense mental space to do some of the stuff that I did when I was younger that was really high risk.
Mm.
That I just don't have the energy to do that now. But like there were other guys that could just do it whilst just being way calmer than me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
It's
because they
very
were way calmer, they could do it better. Sorry.
no, you're good. Yeah, it's so interesting that like yeah, everyone's born with such a very different profile of characteristics and often the biggest strengths are also the biggest vulnerabilities, because let's say you are like super extreme by nature, then it can take you really easily into a very, difficult position because, obviously, like we were saying, like there's two sides of the scale. There's the ultimate extreme, and then there's, some restraint and the ability to have like a little bit of discipline and judgment and all that.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know where I fall. I used to think that I was like pretty extreme, and I think that I've balanced out a lot more in the other way. And we're always just kind of finding our center. I think with these things, you know. But it's helpful to get into the headspaces sometimes.
Well, I mean, I think if you're not getting into those headspaces, then um, you're really not experiencing like the full range of um, you're really not putting yourself into a position where you're like getting the full range of the human experience,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Um, this is the thing I was going to say earlier about society. Like you have this really safe society that you live in within the West, within America, in the UK, and places like that, where we really don't have like a lot of risk that we contend with. That's not outside of like being like voluntarily taking it on, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, aside from like maybe crossing the road occasionally or something like
A
that,
little
right?
jaywalking for
Um,
those bad boys and girls out there.
yeah, so like you don't really come across that, but there are places in the world like now, Kazakhstan. Look at what's happening in Kazakhstan.
What's happening in Kazakhstan?
There's
I actually don't
like
know.
a full scale revolution's happening. People
Holy
are
shit!
like
I'm
being
so
murdered
out
in
of.
the
I
streets
need
and
to
stuff.
tap in.
And other places in the world that are war torn, and people find themselves um, these are really extreme experiences that people are having, and you can fool yourself. This is why I'm talking about reality tunnels, right? You
Mm,
can fool yourself into thinking that your experience, your everyday banal kind of uh, you know uh, corporate kind of mandated experience and state mandated experience, in the West, in your kind of safe little community, is like that's reality, but it's not total reality. It might be yours, but it's not for everybody. And yeah, like stepping outside of that and like expanding your view,
mm,
and like taking in media from these people that are outside of it as well, like independent conflict journalists, like
mm,
artists that are on the fringe, free runners that are putting themselves in those positions and really expressing themselves outside of the realm of respectability.
mm.
That's going to expand your scope and make you see that there's something beyond the pathway that you're placed on.
Beautifully said. All right. I think it's time to get into some of these fan questions because I made a post and we got lots of people that hit me up to ask you a question. And so I'm going to run through them with you. Does that sound good? Or is there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, that's
I
cool,
don't want
man.
to
Yeah.
take your whole evening up for you. But yeah, man. All right. Let's get into it here. Let me just pull it up. How do I do it? This is the first time I've done this, as you
That's
can
cool. That's
probably
cool.
tell. All right. I'll just share them all with you. We won't have to go into each one of them because some of them we already covered. But Dylan Poland says, "Get him going on a political rant." I think we checked that box. But if there's anything else, if you have anything else you want to, rant on, please. But Vinny
No,
Fiacco,
I'm good, bro.
Vinny Fiacco. This is his classic. Would you rather fight 30 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
Mm. Duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? Which one do you reckon would be harder? Which one would be the harder one?
You'd want to do
The
the
the one
harder
that's
one?
harder.
I think it's probably harder to
Yeah,
fight one horse-sized duck, personally.
yeah,
Because I think you could just
yeah,
boot all these little duck horses
yeah,
in the face, and
yeah.
I'd,
Duck-sized horses, yeah.
I like
Just
that.
like you'll be just punting them away. Like there's no, yeah. No, the horse-sized duck,
The
man.
horse-sized
Let's
duck.
let's let's
Yeah,
go.
that'll be tough. All right, yeah. Look at this, rising to the challenge. Is that another Thoreau quote? It's not. But there's one that's like where when there was a path forked in the woods, and I took the harder one, and it just made all the difference, or whatever. Who is that? Do you
hmm
know who that
hmm
is?
I have no idea.
It sounds like
It
him
might be
almost,
him.
but anyway.
It does sound like him.
All right, I love it. Podi Maiku says, "What got you into personal training, and what about training keeps you?" Oh my God, sorry. What got you into personal training, and what about training others keeps you going? Obviously, you're
Uh,
known for
yeah.
coaching Ed Scott, and Tim Champion and Joe Hendo, and I don't know who else, like some notable figures in our sport that have competed really highly. And yeah, please go into it.
Um, like what got me into it was like trying to survive and make money, and you know, I'd spent a lot of time. Initially, I got injured for a very long time.
Mm,
It was like almost a year when I was like 18. And I was like, how am I going to get out of this situation? Because, all of my identity was wrapped up in parkour, and I was just like so depressed and frustrated. And I went to a physiotherapist, and they gave me some body weight exercises to do. And I just felt like this is not doing it for me. This is not really helping me fast enough.
Mm.
And then I bought like a little weight set and started reading like T Nation, which was like a bodybuilding kind of and powerlifting. Like it was like a advertorials, like they kind of
Yeah, yeah,
write
yeah,
like
yeah.
a it was kind of like that because it really was just a front to sell their supplements. But that's kind of how I got into it really.
Yeah.
And what keeps me going is like occasionally I'll get messages from clients, like guys in the sport that will tell me like this has really helped me. And recently got a message from a guy who was having a hard time over the like Christmas period,
Oh yeah.
and he said like this having some routine, something to do, has like helped me through this.
Yeah.
And that's me. Like I initially when I got into competitions, I wanted to be like, I want to win these competitions,
Mm.
get plaudits, get respect, and, get money and stuff. And actually when my athletes would go out and win these competitions, I just felt so much better than I felt like there's no way me winning would feel better than this, like having helped one of my best mates, one of my
Mm.
and then other guys that needed that extra little help, um, helping them make these achievements, even just giving them a small little leg up. That
Yeah.
was what kept me going with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the positive side to the reality tunnel, right? Like you created a small little tunnel for people to follow, right? In a way with your program, and these are the benefits. So it's not all bad. All right. Next, we got live like love, live like Lavinia. What does what does he think about PK Degen? Do you follow PK Degen? Barry Hay? I don't know his last name, how to pronounce it, but do you know that
Barry
account?
He.
Barry He,
Yeah,
excuse me.
yeah, I know him. Yeah, he's hilarious, man. He's well funny.
All right,
Yeah, I've got the t-shirt.
yeah, yeah. Okay, holla. She also asks, when will he start teaching his dog parkour? Okay, she's a fan.
I don't know about that. He's a big boy. He's like 65 kilos. He's not jumping very far, this guy.
All right, Charlie Havel, what motivated your choice of jackal as your spirit animal?
God damn. I can't escape this. Everybody had names on forums. Like
Oh,
when
it was before my time. I was sweet treats, but I never really took because I got into it right as they were tapering off.
I was a little 14-year-old edgy boy on the forums, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna call myself Wind Jackal. And
Oh shit.
yeah. And then I think George McGowan and like Ed found out that that was my nickname for a long time on
Oh
these
yeah.
forums, and now they just call me it all the time. And yeah, I can't escape it. I can't live it down, man.
Ah, it shows up again. The jackal's back. Jackal's
Hate
pretty
it.
cool. He hates it. Oh man, is it like Egyptian jackals? Is that what they are? Where's the jackal? I don't even know what it is. It's a dog,
It's like
right?
a wild
It's
dog.
a wild
Yeah,
dog.
yeah.
All right, Callum Matheson, 54. What source was your best means of learning?
Oh man, I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I've read a lot online.
Hmm.
Um, I read so there's a guy Joe DeFranco who trained a lot of guys for the NFL Combine, and his
Okay.
approach to strength and conditioning was through doing very basic exercises. Like rather than learning all the Olympic lifts and
Yeah.
teaching these athletes even more skills,
Oh yeah.
he was like, "No, we'll do very basic lifts that will get you under enough load to give you the desired outcome in a short period of time." And so I kind of followed that guy, and also Dave Tate from Elite FTS,
Mm.
who wrote the periodization Bible. And then in terms of like uh, politics and philosophy, like I just read the Greeks, like
The Greeks.
pre-Socratics and
Oh shit.
Plato and Aristotle, and then, yeah, a ton of other stuff. Just read, man.
Read.
Just read.
Goddamn. Can't go wrong with the reading. What is so you typically prescribe like deadlift? I mean, I'm not familiar. Olympic lifts are like the power cleans and the jerks and snatches and stuff. Is that What,
Mhm.
and then so you like
So
the simple ones like squat, deadlift, or
yeah.
what is your strategy if you could give it to us in a nutshell? Because I'm just curious, like
Mhm.
if I'm doing
Um,
my shit right, because I'm starting to do a little bit of a few
yeah.
weeks. I'm gonna try to get my numbers up for. I haven't lifted in a while, like seriously, but I want to push myself.
Yeah. So for parkour, I would say like really, uh, first of all, we want to be explosive, right? That's pretty much the sport. It's being explosive.
one Hundred
You want
percent.
to have a bit of endurance with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so being explosive is about power, right? Power is um, it's like maximal force
Over the
and rate of
shortest time.
force. So
Yeah.
it's that's like strength and speed.
Mm.
So you and really, I think what a lot of people fall down on is that they try to get fast before they try to get strong.
Mm.
Um, so you need to be able to produce and manage more force first, and then reduce the amount of time it takes to produce or manage that force, right?
Mm.
So get stronger, then get faster, and use the most effective and least complex movements to do that. So squat, bench, deadlift, weighted dip, weighted pull up. And then any extras are like bonus.
Yeah.
um, I have some specific exercises that I use in my coaching. I keep that like that's if you want to if you
Yeah.
want that you
Hey, we'll
can
go to
go to my website.
movementpower.com.
Yeah,
It'll be in the
movement
link.
power
It's
training.
movement power training.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry, I'll get the link
yeah,
in the
yeah.
description for sure, though.
Someone stole movementpower.com.
Those
Someone
sons
stole
of
that from me.
bast. God damn it! How did they get it? They probably haven't done shit with it either, have they?
No, they're yeah. I didn't renew it 1 year, and then it
Oh wow, they usurped it
got
from you. Damn, that's
yeah.
bad. That's fucked up. Damn. I hope that. Yeah, I hope I don't lose any of my former domains that I haven't paid for. I don't really have any, but all right. Oh, question. One more question just from me is where do you find like is it based on each individual athlete and their goals and etc. But like let's say we're talking about someone like Ed who's obviously
Mhm,
competing and just producing content at the highest level. Where is that boundary between diminishing returns in terms of like how much they focus on
mhm.
their strength and conditioning training and their
Y-
movement training, their whatever technical practice.
mhm. The goal of strength and conditioning is not to get in the way of the athlete's sport training, but to
Mm,
enhance it.
mm,
And so the kind of art of it is balancing it in a way and making it specific enough that you are enhancing that. There's a cost to strength training, like an energy cost and then recovery cost,
mm,
and um, yeah, and there's a certain amount of capacity that your connective tissues have as well. So like, if you're adding in more load bearing and if you're trying to lift quickly at the same time as you're taking a lot of impact as well, that's a lot of force transfer that's happening in the tendons and things. So yeah, it's a balancing act, right?
yeah.
We want to build up. Generally speaking, my my strategy is to do just enough to elicit like adaptation,
Mm,
but not so much where because they're not trying to be a power lifter, they're not trying to be an Olympic lifter,
yeah.
they're trying to be a parkour athlete. So we're going to do just what it takes, and also um, not oversubscribe in terms of putting them under so much load because we're not trying to get them as strong as possible as quickly. Really,
Mm,
we're trying to get them as strong as possible whilst also doing parkour. So you have to,
yeah.
they a lot of the time when my athletes start out, they'll say this feels really light and really easy, and then I say, well, good, because I don't want you like in the first 2 weeks absolutely wrecked from your training sessions and unable to do parkour. But also, um, there's kind of a ramp up period where we want your body to be able to adapt to the additional work, the connective tissues to be able to,
mm,
to to handle that additional load and everything. So yeah, it's I do have a methodology that I use. So there is a kind of a template that I use in terms of it's not necessarily a template, like it's not automatically generated or anything like that.
yeah.
It's not cookie cutter, but I use similar exercises. I use a similar um, methodology in which we have like different phases that we go through, like 6 week blocks
Oh yeah.
with different focuses. Um, but yeah, everybody's circumstances are different. Everybody's coming to it from a different place. Like some people might have done loads of sport before. They might have a fair bit of muscle. They might have some history of like, doing some weight training. Other people might come in and they've done nothing and they've just started parkour. So what I
Yeah.
prescribe to them is going to be entirely different.
Yeah. 100%. Okay. Thank you for that. All right, we got more. Brad Wendez. Opinions on the recent Parkour UK clusterfuck. Which I don't
um,
know. You might have like briefly referenced it as we were talking about how they're, but I don't know what the clusterfuck is that he's referring to. Do you?
yeah, you can. I wrote an article on it on jumpdisclosure.com, which is where I'm trying to do a bit of journalism.
Jump Disclosure. I haven't
So
heard of this. I need to get on Jump Disclosure.
yeah, I
Is that you, or is
I've
that
used
you and others, or who?
it's me for now, but I'd like to get other people involved. I'm just trying to do more in-depth journalism that's like no bells and whistles, just kind of just writing and reporting on different things happening within parkour. Um, and yeah, so I wrote an article there. Initially, Jump Disclosure was a podcast that I was trying to run, which was just going to be like weekly parkour news.
Uh huh.
And I assume I'm not very consistent when I do stuff. I'm pretty bad at being consistent. Um,
I'm guilty as well, man. Can't talk.
but at least with when I'm like writing articles and stuff, it can just stay there, and I can come back to it when I feel inspired to do that. So, but yeah, the parkour UK thing, yeah, I don't really want to talk too much on it outside of the article, just because it references some documentation and it goes into some detail, and I'm also going to be speaking to some people from Parkour UK next week
Okay.
for more perspective on that. So I will be writing another article on it after I've had the conversation with them
Cool.
and gotten some more like sources as well.
Well, I'll be sure to put this. I can't wait to read it. Yeah, I'll put all that in the description as well. Thanks. I'm looking forward to the Jump Disclosure. I like that name too. All right, we got Stephen PK713. If you agree, what makes someone a professional athlete?
uh,
And he
yeah, I
also
mean,
asks, this is the same question, but what are your thoughts on calling themselves a professional athlete? Yeah.
I don't really care. Like, I don't. Why why does it matter? It doesn't matter, does it? Like, who cares? Like, you can call yourself that and great. Like, I think there's only really a handful of like if we're defining it as people that do it as a profession and only get paid from it, only get paid to do parkour. Who's doing that? Like, who's
I don't
who's
know
ever
anyone
doing
actually
parkour?
who's doing that really. That's yeah, it's
But call yourself it. It sounds cool, man. I
yeah.
don't care. Like,
Yeah. It's a marketing gimmick. It's market
yeah.
yourself.
That's. Mhm.
Yeah, I kind
I'm
of
not
agree.
gonna
It's like even when you
gatekeep.
talk about the big wigs in the game, like the Doms and the stores of our world, they're not getting paid to just do parkour. They're getting paid to produce content and edit and create and lots of other things in addition to their awesome parkour
Mhm.
training. But anyhow,
And maybe that is what being a
yeah,
professional parkour athlete is.
exactly.
I have no idea. Um, it's not a protected term.
Yeah.
It's not a prescribed term. So
All right. Good questions though. Okay, he's got one more. What do you think are the main pillars to create a well-rounded parkour athlete?
um, beyond the kind of physical pillars, which would be strength, speed, endurance, resilience to injury, that kind of stuff. Um, you'd have to be uh, proficient in like to a high degree proficient in the basic techniques, and then also beyond that maybe um, working towards uh, breaking or for maybe working towards like I don't know working breaking out of the kind of the field of um, intermediate practice, so doing things in like an advanced way, but that can mean a number of different things. That could be like doing bigger things, or it could be doing things that are outside of the box in terms of creativity, or it
Mm.
could be doing very extreme things.
Mm.
Um, and so maybe not. Maybe the first thing I said, doing bigger things, maybe that should be doing harder things,
Mm.
because yeah, I feel like there's like three different routes you can go down. It's like doing like technically hard things, doing like physically massive things that are very scary, and
Mm-hmm.
then doing like really creative things. And yeah, that's a mental pursuit, right? That's not really a physical pursuit.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's almost four things there, because there's the physically massive things, and then there's the very scary, which are kind of two different things in my world.
Yeah,
Because it's like you could do something super impressive physically on the ground, like a 12-foot
yeah.
jump or something. You're just like, holy fuck! Like it still took insane effort and probably dedication to get that, but maybe there's no consequence.
No,
And then
you're right. Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
things that are
That's very
just
true.
like super impressive that probably don't require much output, but they're super scary.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
all right, two more questions. We got Ollie Dury. Why is Bristol the best English city?
It's not. It's not.
Fair,
It's where I grew up, right?
fair play.
And
Yeah.
I've got a lot of love for that city, but it's terrible now. It's not the best. Brighton's the best city.
Oh yeah, Brighton, baby. All right, it's good to know that. Just in case I have to make a move. I want to get out there again this year if I can. It is it. Last question we've got from Sam Kopic, I think. Is it true
Mhm.
you've never drank water? This is such nonsense. Even only energy drinks. Is it true you've only ever drank energy drinks? Obviously, that's not true, right?
Oh yeah, only ever energy drinks. What I do, I've actually got my taps in my house, and I switch them on. It's just Monster. Do you guys have Monster?
We got
Yeah,
Monster.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, white Monster. That's what I have out of the taps.
All
And
right.
then I shower in Red Bull.
Oh yeah,
That's
that's
what I
much
do.
better for
Yeah, yeah,
your skin. Red Bull. All
yeah.
right. Thank you
It's
for.
transdermal, you know.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I like that Code
It
Red.
absorbs.
That's not really a Mountain Dew. Oh no, I like that Rockstar too. You know,
Rockstar.
I do Rockstar on my face, and I do Red Bull
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
back. All right, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. I can't wait to read your article and just get more well read myself, so I can dive deeper with you next time.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the opportunity, man. Yeah, really, really appreciate like the ability to kind of get on and talk to you about this stuff. Um, yeah, I think it's like really interesting conversation, really. More conversations, need to be had that are, kind of on the periphery of parkour that like kind of bleed into other subjects. I think that's the most interesting stuff to listen to a lot of the time.
I am in 100% agreement. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. We'll catch you
Thanks.
hopefully soon. All right, all right. That was episode 105. Thank you guys for joining, and much love to Tom Taylor for being a part of that one. Hope you guys will find everything you need to in the description, and support the podcast in the same way, and support Tom and what he's doing. And got COVID. I got it. So quarantining now, I guess. I had COVID that whole podcast. So if you didn't like it, I'm blaming it on the COVID. If you did like it, in your face, I did it with COVID. And I love you guys. And I hope to talk to you, many more of you out there in the future episodes. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.